Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Zen-Tube here. Just a bit of a quick update for all of you, for the too long didn't watch crowd. First of all, I'm doing okay. At the time of this recording, it is 4:44 in the morning, and April 16th. And I'm just here to say that, yes, the the washer and dryer saga is now over. So we finally got a new one. It's going to take a little bit to get used to. My issue with it so far is new technology, old house. So very different than what I'm used to as far as operating it. Also, the thing with my tooth situation, it doesn't hurt as much as it did before, but I think the part of the tooth they left in there may be coming out? Question mark. So, kind of hoping that's the case. So yeah, that's pretty much all you need to know, if that's all you're interested in. Otherwise, please stay tuned for the rest of this video, because I'm going to be talking a little bit brief about the recent Nintendo Direct we had. And, although I don't want to get political, I will be mentioning some tariff information. So, you're not interested, there you go. You can stop watching now. Oh, and I've chosen a white space to basically tell you all this. So anyway, let's get into it. So here's the thing about the Nintendo Direct. First of all, I mean, I'm not simping for Nintendo here, but, I'm actually looking forward to the Switch 2, personally. Now, right off the bat, I just want to talk about the price of the console, about it being $450. I mean, without Super Mario Kart World, yeah, I think that's the name of it. Do I want to add more range to the sniper rifle? I guess so. Anyway, personally, I mean, I think 450 is probably around the... if anything, 450 is a little bit on the low end for Nintendo. I mean, if you think about, like, when PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4 first... Or when PlayStation 4 and 5 first came out, or the latest Xbox came out. I mean, brand new, it was probably about $450, $500, maybe even $600, depending on whether you get a deluxe package or whatever. But I think the problem a lot of people have about Nintendo having their console priced at $450 is that historically, or at least since Sega dropped out of the console market, I think Nintendo has always more or less just focused on, whether their games are fun and not so much on the graphics end, which is fine, because, it kind of created for a unique experience between the big three, right? You got one console that has better graphics, but not necessarily better games, like not a whole lot might interest people. On the other hand, you got like a well-rounder, or someone who could be seen as a middle ground between the two, and then you got Nintendo, who's, like I said, focused more on the games rather than the graphics. I mean, you want to play nostalgic games, Nintendo's got your back. At least that's my humble opinion. Also, I think another issue we have with the price of the console, Nintendo's console, is that, because they weren't very good graphically, people generally don't think it's worth that price, I mean, if you think back to, like, the Wii U, for example, I mean, dual screen interactivity was pretty great, but, due to poor marketing and, the confusion about it being... The confusion, with the Wii U is that people just thought it was just another Wii, right? I mean, that was also around the same time, companies stopped advertising on television, because, if you don't keep telling the people over and over again, or if you don't provide information to the people, you know, about what's the difference, you know, people are going to get lost in the sauce. You know, they're not going to know anything. And now I know it's cheaper to probably advertise online, but the thing is with computers is that people who surf the web are only going to see the advertisements based on their search history, based on the computer's search history, you know? So if you're one of those people, again, I'm not going to judge anybody here, but if you're a certain kind of person, you know, you'll only see certain kind of ads. Now, interestingly enough, you know, if you watch YouTube and you don't have YouTube Premium, guess what? If you cast to a television, you know, you might see ads, sure, but you're not going to see, you know, the questionable ads. So to an extent, you know, YouTube, or rather Google, in that regard, does know what's up. You know, they know you're watching on a television and know to, you know, keep things appropriate. On the other hand, if you're watching with your phone or some such, you know, you're going to get more personalized ads. You know, I'm sorry. But anyway, but like I said, you know, now with personalized ads, the problem is that, you know, only the people who are already in the know about the differences will know what you're talking about, right? Like Nintendo fans, I mean, we already knew that the Wii U was different than the Wii. We already knew that. You know, Nintendo advertising to us, you know, didn't tell us things that we didn't already know. It's the new... See, if you want your console to succeed, you got to get new blood in. You know, you got to say, oh, this is different. Now, unlike the Wii and Wii U, calling the Switch 2 Switch 2 is probably a step in the right direction. So even if Nintendo doesn't go above and beyond advertising to several different places around the nation, you know, then it's probably going to work out. I mean, after all, look at the PlayStation and PlayStation 2. Now, speaking of technology, give me a second here. Give me homing shots. Speaking of technology, you know, right now I'm playing on the Switch on a, I want to say this is a 17-inch television, I guess. You know, and graphically, I mean, it's pretty good. It's operating at a 1080p, but you know, but suffice to say, this TV is not capable of 4K, and more importantly, I'm not sure if my new, well, I guess I can't really call it new anymore. Let's just say my current laptop, you know, although it is newer than my old one, I don't know if I can handle recording in 4K. So, you know, if you want to watch something in 4K, you know, that's probably regarding an upscale. That'd probably require just simple upscaling on your part. But, yeah, so in terms of me providing content to you, you know, if I'm able to get a hold of the Switch 2, you know, I just want you all to know that, you know, if I'm able to deliver a 4K experience to you, great. If not, you know, I ask that you be kind about it, because I guess technically HD is still considered different than the quote-unquote standard definition. I mean, personally, I think 1080p should be the new standard definition and HD should be 4K, but, you know, what do I know, right? Now, getting back to the price of the console, I believe that was a live I believe when the what do you call it? When the Direct dropped, you know, I think it was probably I think it was a live performance, and it was around the same time the news about the United States tariffs were introduced, you know. And so Nintendo probably scrambled saying, don't mention the price, but, you know, but the information leaked anyway, and so we know the price on Nintendo's website, you know. See, once you already put it out there, you know, people are going to know, and I don't know anything about it, but I guess there's a thing called the Wayback Machine, not to be confused with that thing that Peabody and Sherman used. Anybody? Peabody and Mr. Sherman? No? Just me? Okay, I guess I'm the only one who used to watch cartoons. Anyway. But yeah, so we know the price that it's $450, quite probably higher than any console has ever been. Now, now some experts are saying that, you know, well, adjusted for inflation, you know, all these other consoles that we've been getting over the years, you know, would be priced even higher than that. Well, yeah, but nobody's playing them either, you know. Maybe, I mean, okay, maybe brand new and it's still in the box, you know, collector's value. Yeah, you know, a regular, you know, 8-bit NES would probably be like $500 or $600, you know, unopened, you know, unscathed and unweathered to time. Yeah. I mean, you're right there, but good luck getting a way to play those consoles, or hell, why even open it, you know, and diminish the collector's value, right? But yeah, so I think Nintendo right now is kind of in a bit of a weird scenario, right? I mean, Nintendo, I mean, we're huge consumers of video games, right? I mean, we live for this stuff. I mean, well, if you're a millennial, you probably live for this stuff. I mean, me, I grew up in an age, you know, I mean, the internet had only just came out sometime after I was born. I mean, I was born in '86, and the internet was first introduced to the public, like, what, 95? So, yeah, I'm pretty old. FYI, I'm 38 years old now, so, yeah, you know. So I've been around for a while, I guess. I don't know. Sorry, I'm trying to stay hydrated here. But anyway, as far as the price of the console goes, Nintendo's kind of in a weird, you know, situation where they can't raise the price any further because, you know, they don't want to shoot themselves in the foot. They still want to sell the darn thing, right? But on the other hand, you know, they don't want to, they have to make money somehow, you know, whether the money is made, whether they make up the money in terms of the games or not. I mean, even before, you know, everything was announced, like, I think back in, like, late March, you know, when they took down the gold points, or turned off the ability to earn gold points. You know, I mean, clearly Nintendo wants you to spend a good hard-earned money on this, right? They don't want you to save any kind of money. Of course, you know, the gold points, you know, honestly, I personally don't really think I've ever earned enough gold points that, you know, throughout its history to really make a difference, right? I think the only thing of high dollar I got with gold points was like the first pass on Smash Ultimate, you know, the first 5 or 6 DLC fighters. I mean, it was worth it, by the way, but, you know, that's really the only significant purchase that I used the gold points on. Everything else was just, whatever, you know, save a couple bucks here and there. Now, even without gold points, I mean, I'm sure Nintendo at some point will probably, you know, again, if they want to make money, you know, from people who are holding out, you know, they'll drop the price a little bit for their games online. You know, so if you're a person who, I mean, retail, no, you're not going to see a drop in price. They're not going to you're not going to see the game sitting on the shelf for $30-$40 dropped any lower than that. You know, they're not going to do a greatest hits. They're not going to do that. Unless you're buying it online, you know, you're not going to be able to buy a game on sale, you know? So even if Nintendo doesn't raise the price of the console, you know, they'll still probably make up the difference in their games, you know? Which brings me to another issue in that, I mean, graphically, you know, we're hoping that the Switch, you know, is really going to be worth the price, you know? Because that's the other issue, that's the other side of the coin. You know, you want a console that, if you're going to buy something, you want to buy something that's going to last, you know? You're going to want to, I'll go to vending machine corner. You want to buy something that's going to last you a while. Now, Here's the thing. There is a difference still between the Wii, or excuse me, the Switch and the Switch 2. Remember when the original Switch came out back in 2017? I mean, how many games were available then? Not many. I mean, sure. I mean, if it hadn't been for Zelda Breath of the Wild, I'm sure the Switch would have failed. It would have been done like duck dinner right then and there. Now, that's, I mean, okay, sure, maybe Shovel Knight Spectre of Torment would have carried, but I mean, let's face it, you know, that game was meant to be like an 8 or 16-bit game by choice, graphically speaking, you know. Speaking of which, I'm hoping Yacht Club Games is doing okay, because, I don't know, it seems like we're hearing less and less about them, you know? Like, my concern is Yacht Club Games is like a one-trick pony, you know? Like, they came in, they made one game, and now that seems to be it, you know? So I'm hoping they're doing all right. It'd be a shame for them to fall by the wayside, but anyway. Let's see, with the Switch 2, you know, it was already advertised in the Direct that a lot of the games that we have on the Switch now will be compatible with the Switch 2. So I'm hoping this is going to be a similar situation to, like, you know, when they upgraded the DS side of the 3DS. I'm hoping that a good chunk of games are going to be playable or transferable to this new system. And, you know, so if you're someone like me who has a lot of games on their console, then yeah, $450, you know, a $450 console that's backwards compatible with all your other games, I mean, that's quite a bargain. You know, you can't deny that. You know, of course, as far as which games exactly are going to be transferable, you know, outside of the ones they announced by name on the Direct, you know, it's hard to say which games are going to be available. If I had to venture a guess as far as which games are going to be compatible or not, well, I can't really mention them by name, but there are certain games that are that have been advertised on the Switch eShop that are, let's just say they're for a specific audience. You know, look, if you know, you know. I'm not gonna spell it out for you. I don't see those games being transferable. I really don't, because again, Nintendo maintains a quote family-friendly, you know, experience, and yet inversely, how is it that they are on the Switch eShop to begin with? You know, of course, inversely, you know, with this whole tariff situation, they may look the other way, you know, for the sake of a buck. You know, of course, you know, in which case, you know, if you're a parent looking to keep your children safe or whatever, you gotta read up on the parental controls, because, you know, I'm sorry, you know, you gotta step up and be a parent. I mean, take it from me. I grew up with a thing called the V-chip. It was a thing on televisions that blocked out certain content or subject matters. You know, so yeah, don't be afraid to be the heavy or be the parent, you know. Because, you know, if an organization steps in and takes care of it, you know, they're going to take care of it for everybody, and nobody's going to benefit, you know. You gotta, you know, sound wave damage. Yeah, let's just go all damage. All right. So, yeah, $450 for a system that's backwards compatible with a lot of other titles. You know, quite a bargain. Now, will Mario Kart 8 Deluxe be backwards compatible with the Switch? With the Switch 2. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, if Nintendo it would be a real power move on Nintendo's part to say, oh, no, that game can't be transferred. We want you to play the new Mario Kart. I'm sorry. You know, it would be, you know, quote unquote a dick move, you know, but on the other hand, I mean, it kind of would make sense, right? I mean, you can't, I mean, it'd be disappointing, but, you know, it is what it is, right? You Now, as far as like Breath of the Wild, or as far as Breath of the Wild, Switch 2 edition not having by default the DLC packs like Master Quest and Champion's Ballad. You know, that was, I mean, that's a little disappointing, but again, you know, Nintendo's got to make up the revenues somehow. So, in a way, you know, without even increasing the price any further than they already kind of set themselves up for the tariffs, right? I mean, if anything, the fact that tariffs are going on now is kind of, I wouldn't say it's a happy accident, but it's kind of coincidental, you know? See, this way, Nintendo can't look like complete villains here, you know? They're just trying to survive, you know? Now, it would be interesting, though, to see from this point going forward what other companies are going to do, right? Like, what is Microsoft going to do? What is Sony going to do, you know? Will Nintendo actually raise the price, you know, like X number of days from now? Or, you know, will our president be magnanimous enough, you know, and say, maybe another 30 or 60 days, you know? Like, I mean, how far is he going to push this? Because, I don't know, to me it seems like he's doing this just seemingly out of nowhere, right? And, you know, I'm not going to I don't want to criticize I don't want to criticize my president, and, you know, just so we're clear, you know, I'm whiter than sour cream. So, yeah. I mean, I'm not speaking out. I'm not defecting or speaking out here. I'm just saying, you know. I mean, I personally just don't think, you know, I don't think China's necessarily messing with us, you know. And, you know, if something's been happening over the course of several years, and by the way, you know, our own president, you know, I mean, he's talking like the last 50 years. And again, I'm only 38, so I don't know. He might know something that I don't. But, you know, to be fair, I mean, you know, our country should be building things here, right? Of course, you know, nobody wants to work in a factory, nobody wants to sweat, nobody wants to stink. I mean, there are jobs out there in this country, you know, but nobody wants to do them, you know? I mean, I know I don't speak on behalf of everybody, but, you know, I mean, I just work retail, you know, and I'm making like a little over $20 an hour. You know, when I first started, I was making $12 an hour, and that's with shift differential on overnight. I personally don't need to be making as much as I do now. But again, the only reason I'm making as much as I do now is because of inflation, you know. Speaking of which, and this is a question I want to ask everybody here. If the tariffs do, you know, ramp up or activate again after 90 days, I mean, and if you don't have a Switch 2, will you be willing to pay more for the Switch 2? Or are you going to hope that it drops in price? You know, are you going to do a supply and demand thing, and hope that, you know, Nintendo drops the price? Or, I mean, I don't see, or is this going to be a scenario where Nintendo is going to be forced to maybe try to eke out another couple of years with the Switch before, you know, canning it, you know? Because, well, I mean, they survived the Wii U. I'm sure they can find something. I'm sure they can survive somehow, right? That might help. Yeah, so I know I sounded like I was rambling there, but, you know, long and the short of it is that, you know, I'm not really a fan of the tariffs, but I have to But, you know, I can only hope that there's a good reason for it, you know? Got him. Let's see, what else could we talk about here? Oops. Oh, she doesn't have any attack option. Let's give her one. So, anyway, let's talk about Breath of the Wild and you know, Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, first of all, you know, a Switch 2 edition of those games, I mean, it's fine, I guess. Again, you know, people who haven't picked it up who have not picked up a copy of it, you know, since they came out, you know, for them to not have the boon of a game on the cheap, you know, I mean, is rather disappointing, you know. But then again, I mean, it seems like since, come to think of it, did Nintendo ever have a greatest hits of their games? Like, I don't know, it seems like there was a time where they actually, you know, permanently reduced the price of their older games, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe it was during the console wars? I don't know. I don't think I can recall a time Nintendo ever reduced the price except maybe during, like, you know, sales on the eShop, you know. But anyway, so anyway, I'm not sure if, as it is right now, it would be cheaper to, I think it would probably be cheaper actually to buy, like right now, if you have a Switch, to buy, you know, Breath of the Wild, you know, plus its DLCs, because according to Nintendo, if you're, well, okay, I guess besides the fact that you have to be a Switch Online service, aside from having to pay, you know, annually for a Switch Online service, you know, they did say that, you know, the extra download would be free of charge. You know, of course, it's not completely free, you know. Again, you have to be an online service, you have to pay for an online service, but, you know, it is an annual service, so, you know, just make sure you got money in your account before you're charged, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I'm not sure if it would be cheaper, actually, than to buy Breath of the Wild now for the Switch, get all the updates for it, and then when the Switch 2 gets around, you know, just make use of the app. And even then, like, most players have already beaten that game already, so I don't know how much more of an enhancement the Switch 2 version of Breath of the Wild could be. I mean, well, hell, I mean, I've already beaten Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, you've already seen that on my channel, but oh no, why did I do that? I can't even buy it anyway. Shoot. So, yeah, not sure. Got him. Let's see. I guess one of the things I'm looking... Oh, speaking of things about the Switch 2, one of the things that I'm not really too keen on is, like, I can't remember if they said it would be included or sold separately, but what made Nintendo think that adding a camera was somehow a good idea? I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, the DSi, the DS, the DSi, I mean, they did have some microphone technology, and yes, you could talk to people. I mean, not that the microphone technology was good or great, but, you know, they did actually... You were actually able to talk to people then, but I just don't think that this camera thing is going to be... I'm not sure if they said the camera was included with the Switch 2 or not, but if it is included with the Switch 2, you know, and it's still $450, I can see definitely in the future that they'll probably, you know, I mean, they'll either sell it separately or they'll completely nix the camera altogether. Because, you know, even though, you know, even though parents and responsible adults can just simply turn that feature off, you know, with a parental control app, you know, there's always going to be one person who's going to ruin it. And, you know, Nintendo, being Nintendo, you know, instead of hiring a lawyer to basically tell, you know, Keith or Karen that, I'm sorry, sir or madam, but... You know, parental controls exist for a reason. If you don't, you know, best we can do is tell you to just, you know, monitor your children's activity, you know. But no, I don't see Nintendo doing that. In fact, much like with the 3DS Swap Note app, you know, they'll probably just nix it. You know, they'll probably just stop selling the camera altogether, which would mean that any future console they do sell would probably have to be... I mean, it would probably have to be less in price if it... I mean, again, this is probably assuming if the camera came with the system. If it didn't... If it's not going to come with the system, then, you know, I'm sorry to say, you know, we probably won't be seeing a price drop anytime soon, you know? But like I said, you know, if Nintendo wants to sell this at $450, I'm just going to say this right now, they have to hit this out of the park. And with the tariff situation, you know, they have to make sure their stuff works, right? Because from my understanding, I don't think they've really necessarily improved, their Joy-Cons. I mean, well, they attach differently than the Switch One, but they probably have to make sure that this stuff works. And to do that, you know, I'm hoping they've gone through some extensive product testing. Because here's the thing, kids, you know, they kind of wreck, you know, their toys, right? I mean, I'm not just talking about, like, button bashing or button mashing, you know, because sometimes, I mean, kids back in the day, I mean, you know, they hold in the button with all their might, you know, thinking that's going to do anything, you know. I know this because I did it when I was a kid. I did this, like, you know, fun fact, you know, when I was playing, you know, Super Mario Kart on the SNES, you know, I would always have my thumb pressing the up button when I'm driving around because I don't know, I just thought maybe that helped make the car go, I guess. Of course, I didn't know anything about drifting back then, so yeah, suffice to say I wasn't winning any 150cc race, but, you know. But even then, you know, I've since played Super Mario Kart on the SNES. You know, I went back to it, and yeah, the drifting and the controls in that game are not smooth at all. Like, I can't, I don't know, maybe it's just that I'm used to modern gaming, but, you know, my brain can't shift to the old technology, you know. So, if there is drifting in the original Super Mario Kart, you know, I guess I just never figured it out. Let's go here. So yeah, Nintendo, I mean, if you're listening, you know, you got to be worth your price point, you know? I mean, this isn't an ultimatum, this is just fact, you know? I mean, that might help. Let's see. Okay. Got him. More homing shots. I would like quick charge, though. Okay, I think I'll probably end this video at, what, floor 15? You know, I think I've run out of things to say at this point, so, main damage distant or more range? Like, well, it's a sniper rifle. I got plenty of range, but I could use more damage, actually. Got him. Oh, give me more shot homing, why not? Whew, that was difficult. Alright, well, I think I rambled on long enough. What? Hello? Whoa. I don't know if anyone saw that, but the screen just briefly blacked out on me there. So yeah, I think I'll end the this recording here. So just to summarize, you know, I'm doing all right. Not a fan of the Switch 2. Not a fan of the Switch 2 price, but you know, I remain optimistic, and hopefully this whole tariff nonsense blows over one way or the other. So, you know, fingers crossed, here's hoping, etc., etc. Anyway, oh, and go USA. So, anyway, that's all the time I have for you. Please look forward to my next update video, or continue watching my series on Super Mario World. Till then, later.